Hello and welcome back to Marketing Management, the show where we address the all-critical issue of how many blue shirts do I actually own? In this episode, we're going to be talking about customer segmentation and targeting. And this is the first and most fundamental thing you need to understand about marketing, because marketing is all about people. It's all about their psychology and it's all about persuasion. After all, it's the customer who makes up that Q, who pays the P in the revenue part of that equation. And to do this well, we need to deeply understand the needs of those customers and be able to serve offerings up to them effectively. Think about the things that you buy for just a second. What's in it for you? Are you satisfying hunger? Are you trying to look good? Are you simply looking for a cure for boredom? How do these things make you feel when you have them? Do they make you feel savvy or capable? Do they make you feel well-liked or accepted? Human beings all have the same fundamental needs. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves. Now, if you've studied any psychological frameworks like Maslow's hierarchy or any number of other frameworks about the self, you'll understand that human beings have the same fundamental four needs. At the most base level, we have the need for life. We need food, we need water, we need air. Right? Fortunately, air is relatively free, but we have to pay for food and we have to pay for water. At the next level, what we have is safety and security. So shelters like our apartments and our houses that we pay for, these things provide us some level of security and some sense of safety. But beyond that, we also buy security systems to protect our home and our valuables. We buy safes for our houses. We also buy insurance in order to negate catastrophic financial events. Self-esteem is a little bit more complex of an animal, but includes things that make us feel good about ourselves. Now, this is one of the toughest things about marketing, is the individual differences of things that make people feel good about themselves. But it includes things like we buy perfume and colognes to make ourselves smell good. We buy clothing to make ourselves look good. We buy low-carb snacks so that we can feel good about the foods that we're putting into our bodies. At the highest level is self-actualization. Now, this is about aspiration and achievement. And so things like college degrees or showing the trappings of success by buying and wearing a Rolex watch or driving an Audi car so that you can show yourself and others how successful you are. Now, the interesting thing is, if not for all of these unique differences, the world would be vanilla. Now, don't get me wrong. My dad loves vanilla ice cream. I prefer to drown mine in root beer. I'm a rock and roller who met his wife of 20 years through music. I snowboard and inline skate to satisfy my need for adventure and adrenaline, and to make me feel like I'm still cool and capable, even though I'm kind of old. I train in karate to remind myself of the discipline I once had in the Army, and to teach my kids discipline and give them a sense of self-confidence. Cut! Let's talk about you for a second. Take a minute or two and do some introspection. What's important to you in life? What brands do you purchase that help you achieve or represent those things that are important to you in life? I guarantee you that almost everybody watching these videos has some unique set of different things that is important to them in life and the brands that they use to display those things that are important to them. Of course, people often experience gaps in these needs. Sometimes we fail in life. Sometimes we don't feel good about ourselves. Sometimes we don't even feel safe or secure. This is where the self and the social self come into play. So the actual self is how you perceive yourself right now as to who you are. Your ideal self is who you want to be. If there is a difference between the self that you see yourself as right now and the self that you want to be, there's a gap and a need to fill that gap. The social level, there's also the social self and the ideal social self. So I don't know if you can see what's coming here. The social self is how other people currently perceive you, and the ideal social self is how you want other people to perceive you. Again, if there's a gap between those two things, then you need to fill that gap in order to feel good about yourself, because people don't see you the way that you want to be seen. To fill these gaps, we often make purchases. We buy things to make us feel better about ourselves. We buy things that help us fit in better socially. Some marketers along the way have decided to use this knowledge for evil, to extend the gap between the self and the ideal self, and the social self and the ideal social self. A classic case of this is in using supermodels to advertise to women. It's had a negative effect on adolescent girls' self-esteem and body image, basically saying, hey, if you want to be beautiful, you have to use our products, otherwise you're not beautiful. Smart brands like Dove have figured out that you're much better off having a strong relationship with customers and bolstering their self-esteem as opposed to trying to erode it and then backfill. This should be our primary focus as marketers, to satisfy truly deep needs of our customers and have them be grateful and happy that we exist. Customer needs are also referred to as pain points. And as marketers, we want to be the prescription. Whether these needs are focused on price, reassurance, usability, accessibility, or any other number of needs, we want to be the solution for that customer. And this is where my favorite four-letter F word comes in: feel. Critically, we need to understand how things make people feel. Not simply what our products and our brands do, but how they also make people feel on an emotional level. Feeling is much deeper than cognition. Think about it for a second. You're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. Do you start with cognition?
Hey man, you just cut me off. I wonder what the pros and cons are if I teach you a lesson.
Or do you react emotionally and then cognitively justify it later?
Oh no, you did not just cut me off. I'm gonna teach you a lesson. Get some.
Also, does the offense go away quickly, or does it linger and come back? This is the power of emotion. As marketers, we can harness the power of positive emotions. Think about Disney for a second. Their vision statement is literally to make people happy. And how do they go about doing this? They have amusement parks, TV shows, film, licensed merchandise, all of these things bent on making people happy. Now that we understand the importance of feel, we must also realize that not everybody feels the same way about everything. Some people prefer excitement, some people prefer leisure, some people prefer affiliation, and some people prefer to be alone. And even more so, it depends on the given day and the given situation as to whether somebody might prefer one or the other. As an example, sometimes I prefer to be alone shredding a terrain park on a snowboard. Sometimes I prefer to be at home with my family around me playing a board game. Down the road, we'll talk about identifying and tracking these customer differences. But one of the keys here to understand is that we simply cannot be everything to everyone. We need to find the right customer base and we need to address them uniquely. It's important to identify a core customer base and then to serve their needs distinctly. Others may come along for the ride, and some of these outliers here, but we have to be something to someone. We have to have meaning. We have to be ready to forego other attractive opportunities in order to strengthen our relationship with that customer base. People want to feel like the brand was made for them, that they're special and that they're unique, and that this brand is specifically serving them and not other people. They want a strong, intimate relationship with a brand so that they can feel like they are separated out and distinct from other people. Do the following exercise for just a minute. Write the numbers 1 through 5 on 5 scraps of paper. Put them on a table. Take 5 to 10 other scraps of paper, which will represent customer responses to the following question. How much would you enjoy eating sushi for dinner tonight? 1 being not at all enjoy this, and 5 being absolutely enjoy this. Ask 5 to 10 people this question and put a scrap of paper above the corresponding number on the table for each response. Chances are you'll see a distribution of responses rather than everyone giving the same number. So what does this mean in the context of selling sushi? Well, your 4s and your 5s are your primary target market. The 1s and the 2s are not interested in your offerings at all, and you should forego them. The 3s probably need some other context to be able to make up their minds. This is why it helps to stand for something and to reinforce what you stand for at every opportunity across that marketing mix. Think about McDonald's for a second. McDonald's started out as a low-cost fast food restaurant. And then they started to add in healthy menu options. Subway knows who they are. They promote healthy. Hardee's or Carl's Jr., they know who they are. They promote not caring about what it is that you're eating or putting inside of your body. McDonald's is trying to be both. Once we decide what we're going to stand for, we have to identify our customer base. Who are they? Where are they? How do we engage with them? Let's take a look at some basic customer characteristics that we can find out that will allow us to locate our customers and to best serve them. So there are 4 main types of customer characteristics: demographics, geographics, psychographics, and behaviors. Demographics are basic descriptors of people that you can find in outlets like a census. Age, ethnicity, gender, income, education level, marital status, etc. These characteristics are often linked to geographic locations so that you can see in a given city block of, say, New York City, for example, what the percentage breakdown of different demographic groups is. These are called geographics. Now, this in and of itself does not get us to where we need to be with the deeper feelings and responses that we're after. Ideally, we want to understand psychographics, how people think and what motivates them, and behaviors, what they actually do as a function of what they think and how they feel. Now, there is no perfect solution, but what we're looking for here is a high probability bet. Think about a game of blackjack where you have 3 hands against the dealer. You want to put more money down on the hand with the highest probability of winning. In marketing, instead of a blackjack hand, we're looking at locations or media outlets. We're going to spend to build buildings, or we're going to spend money on marketing budgets to distribute ads. Victory is not guaranteed, but what we want to do is spend where we have the best chance of turning a profit. Now, we can always make some broad level statements about demographics, such as young people tend to be less risk averse and older people tend to be less technologically savvy. Fortunately, we have ways of tying psychographics and behaviors to more demographic and geographic types of information. This is what Facebook does with all of those data. Your profile, everyone you're related to, every time you post, that information is sold to other companies that want to be able to effectively target you. This is how Facebook makes all of its money. And given that not every company is Facebook or has its resources, how can we still go about finding high probability linkages between demographics and geographics and psychographics and behaviors? Let's talk to some industry experts to see how they do it.
All right, well, Jennifer Massenberg, thanks so much for coming on the show. The Marketing and Community Development Director for the Cardiac and Vascular Institute in Gainesville, Florida.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'd like to start out kind of talking about your background. It's interesting, kind of starting out in political science with a bachelor's degree. Can you tell us a little bit about how that journey went from there into marketing, and particularly in the medical field?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I worked full-time. And when I was working full-time, I was working in a hospital here in our town. And I was working in the cardiology department. And what happened was when I was in school, I was getting my political science degree because I found the subject matter fascinating. And I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I thought, well, I might as well get my degree in something that I love learning about and something that is just absolutely fascinating to learn about. I love learning history, and I love learning how people and places work with one another. So I thought I might as well get my degree in a subject that I enjoy going to class every day. I enjoy the subject matter. So that's how I ended up in political science.
That makes sense.
So while I was learning about everything I loved, I just happened to be in the medical space paying my bills. So I was going to school every morning from taking classes 7:30 to noon. And then I was working every day in the cardiac cath lab from 1 to 9 p.m. So when I graduated,
that's a long day.
Yeah, well, things you got to do when you're working full time and going to school full time, right? And so when I graduated, I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So it was a natural transition just to stay in the position that I was over at the hospital, which morphed into being the coordinator of the cardiac cath lab. So what that meant was that I was air traffic control for the cardiology department. So I managed the schedules, I managed the physicians, I managed the entire department and the comings and goings of the procedures. So that transitioned into going to work in the private practice world, because the cardiologists that I worked with at the hospital have their own practice, and they asked me to come work for them and to expand one of their clinical programs. And so I went to work at their office in one of their clinical programs. I'm not clinical, but as a coordinator to expand one of our programs. And what happened was, being over the coordinator of one of their clinical programs expanded into, well, we need somebody to also give focus to the other programs within the cardiology practice. So it started from a means to pay bills to work full time to well, because we've worked with you for 10 years at the hospital, will you come help us in our practice? From going to the practice to now I am the director of all things marketing, branding, communication, social media, community development, education, you name it. Physician liaison, practice liaison, anything that you would think would fall under that umbrella.
Okay, so one of the interesting things, and we talked about this a little bit prior to this, with medical practices being really kind of interesting animals, and you noted in our prior discussion that you basically have a monopoly within 7 different counties surrounding Gainesville, Florida, right? So when a company's got a monopoly, when a practice has a monopoly like that, what is the purpose of marketing? What are you actually accomplishing? What's the role of marketing in that situation?
Yeah, so we're in a very interesting market where we're located. So what we have is a private cardiology practice where we are physician owned. So we've got 21 physicians in our practice, and out of that we have 15 owners. Wow. Because we've got physicians that are just starting their career, so they're not partners yet, and a couple of physicians that are on the backside of their career, so they're on the retirement plan in the next few years. So we've got 15 physician owners of our practice. And we are the only private cardiology practice within about 7 counties, like you said. Our competition is a academic center that's associated with the University of Florida. So what that means in terms of us for marketing, it's not so much a gaining of market share per se, because the way our market here in our area is if your insurance doesn't dictate that you have to be seen in that academic center, then you're on the private practice side of the area.
Okay.
So it's not so much that we market in terms of gathering market share, in terms of gathering up other people's business. It's more so making sure what people know what we do. So like I said, we're a cardiology practice, but what people don't understand is that cardiologists take care of all aspects of your veins and arteries in your body. So somebody won't associate disease in their legs or in their neck with a cardiologist, but those are all things that we take care of. So for us, it's a marketing of, do you know what we do? Not so much of we're better than them. I mean, there's an aspect to that, but we are, because we are, but.
Yeah, you're on record here, so you have to say that you're the best.
That's right. We are the best. We are. Actually, I've worked with these guys for 17 years, so I can say that they are the best.
Yeah. So ultimately what you're saying is that a lot of this is really communications focused and knowledge focused, where you're trying to explain that and create the right associations for all those different potential target segments. So kind of leading in that direction, who are the different target segments that you all address? What tools, techniques do you use to address them? Are there differences in the ways that you address different target segments?
Okay, so where we are located, because we don't have a typical competition, as you might say, we have 2 target audiences. We have colleagues to the physician, so we have the medical community that would refer their patients into a specialty like ourselves. And you also have the community side. So you have people that are not in the medical space in terms that they're not a physician, they're not a nurse practitioner, they're not a physician assistant, they're not someone that's going to send us their patients to be taken care of. So we have kind of 2 avenues of who we talk to, and the communication on those 2 avenues are very different, but the common thread between both of them is education. We just have to educate our 2 avenues differently. So on one side, like I said, we have the medical professionals, right? So we have physicians, physician assistants, nurse practitioners. The conversation for them is going to be more of a clinically data-driven, guideline-driven conversation, as opposed to on the community side, like I said, it's a, did you know that we take care of this? If you are feeling these signs and symptoms, you need to come see us. Don't forget that your cardiologist also takes care of X, Y, and Z. It's more of a public service announcement, so to speak, making sure that people are aware of what our physicians take care of, making sure that they're having the correct conversations with either us when they come to see us or their other healthcare, members of their healthcare team. Because what happens is typically people forget when they go to see their healthcare provider. So we need to make sure that we're always in their mind of conversation. So in case something comes up that they can tell their general practitioner, and as an example, the issues that they're having, so they will be referred into our practice. So it's two sides. So it's both education, it's a different type of education. And on the medical side of that, we have different conversations depending on what kind of physician, what kind of background we're talking to. So we're going to have a different conversation, different education with a general practitioner. So we're going to be talking more guideline based with them, because what happens with general practitioners is they see a little bit of everything, right? So we need to make sure that we're letting them know what the newest guidelines are, because they, as wonderful as general practitioners are, they are just not going to read every single piece of material on a specialty. That's our job, right?
And they're probably pretty busy people, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we need to give them the Cliff Note version of when their patient shows up in their office and gives them, what's been happening with them. We need to make sure that they know the Cliff Note version that triggers oh, okay, well, you need to go see a specialist about X, Y, and Z. And so that conversation could also be different from, let's say, a podiatrist, right? So podiatrists take care of feet all day. You wouldn't necessarily relate legs or feet with a cardiologist, but what happens is with a podiatrist, we need to let them know that if they have a patient, let's say with a wound on their foot that won't heal, that could be related to lack of blood flow into the foot, if that makes sense. Lack of blood flow, because you have to have blood in order to heal. So it's a different conversation with even another specialty in that community side, a community avenue of education.
What are some of the techniques that you use to reach out to people on the community side and through the practitioners?
So on the community side, we do very, very, I would say, industry standard communication. So we're going to reach out on social media. We're going to put, commercials. We're going to do print ad. It's very hit or miss, but we send out press releases that we want to get picked up by the local media. We try and do health segments on television. We work with the hospital that we that we see patients in. We work very closely with them to team up to get the word out about what new research we're involved in, what clinical trial is open for them to explore, with our parameters, et cetera. We're going to do community events, like we're going to hold talks and kind of town halls with patients where we tell them, today we're talking about whatever subject matter. We're going to give a short talk about it, educational talk, and we're going to do a question answer after that. So what usually tends to be the best for us in terms of return on investment on the community side are the community talks, right? Because people love to have a one-on-one with a physician in the room. And then on the flip side, on the medical side, what we do with them, what tends to be very favorable with them is we also have the in-person one-on-ones, COVID being a little bit different these days, but
I'll get there in a second.
It's tricky times for that. But in the past, what has tended to be successful are what we do is we go to educational dinners where it gives us an opportunity to sit down and discuss, like I said, guidelines, updates, things to look for in a setting that's not so chaotic in the office, right? So I, as myself, I visit offices all day, every day. I stop in because what happens is what most people on the on the medical side want is a lifeline, right? So you have to maintain the personal relationships as a lifeline, because practices and the way what happens is life gets busy. Patients are it's busy and they don't have time to stop. And that's not to say that they aren't thinking the best for their patients, but I mean, you're just moving and grooving throughout the day, right? So they need to have a person, a lifeline to either another physician to fast track a patient into our office. So not only do I have to utilize our clinicians doing the educational part, I have to utilize myself in being a lifeline for them to reach out should they need anything or have any questions, have any issues, whatever the case is.
Gotcha. And so, since you brought up the elephant of the decade and COVID, how has that impacted your ability to market to different segments?
Yeah, so we have kind of flipped the switch on a bunch of subject matter. So on the community side, so across the board, in person, anything has dramatically decreased, right? And so, yeah, and so it's been a really strong on the job learning curve. I think with anyone across any industry of how to handle everyday life, B, how to talk to others. So we're in it as well. We had we're cardiologists, so we see patients in the office. We had to do a hard crash of learning how to treat patients over electronics to make sure that they're stable until we can get them into a safe environment, right? So on the community side, we had to communicate to our patients that just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean that your heart problems don't stop. So you still need, right? So we have to communicate to them that you still need to see your practitioner. We still need to take care of you. Don't stop doing the things for your health just because we got this other elephant in the room going on. So the communication to the patients was blast emails, social media, putting out notices of and when I say notices, I'm talking just even as little as putting notices inside of our offices, letting them know that the steps that we were taking to keep them safe, right? I mean, it starts with being right in front of your face, a notice in your office, to putting things outside in terms of, like I said, social media, commercials, etc. But I will say that all that is all well and great, but what people also need to really have a big takeaway is you have to market internally before you can go externally, right? So every Monday, I send out a newsletter to our employees, giving them a snapshot of what's happening in our practice for that week. Some weeks are busy. Some weeks we have a lot of things going on. Other weeks we don't. And so your employees are your best marketers. They are your best tools to get the word out about whatever it is you're trying to put out into the public, right? So I need to make sure that our employees knows what's happening in the walls of our offices so that they can help me effectively communicate to our patients how we're keeping them safe in COVID times. I need for them to let the offices that are sending their patients to us know your patients are safe with us, right? So I guess actually we're kind of marketing to three. Now I think about it, we're marketing to three people. I'm marketing to my employees. We're marketing to the community, and we're marketing to the medical colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting one that a lot of people kind of overlook, is that internal marketing aspect. And you're trying to build a successful brand, whether you're a medical practitioner or, you're Amazon, you're trying to build a solid brand that creates positive perceptions about what it is that you're offering. And critical to that are the employees that are working within those constraints and trying to satisfy customers, patients, whoever it happens to be.
Right. So if I work every day, all day long to tell outside how great we are, but our employees don't know how great we are, or they don't feel it, or they're contradicting what I say when they go home, then we've made no headway, right? Because everything is also really based on word of mouth. So we send out, as an example, we send out a patient satisfaction survey, right, to every patient that walks in our door. The one line in that entire survey that I care about the most is likelihood of recommending our practice. So the likelihood of recommending the product, the likelihood of recommending the business. That is what I care about the most of all the questions on there. Because at the end of the day, I need for someone to say, oh, I would send my mom. I would tell my best friend that's the place to go. That's the product to buy. They're the ones. You need something, they're the only ones I would go to, right? At the end of the day, it's the likelihood of recommending said, for us practice, but business, product, whatever the case is. And I need our employees to be part of that. The likelihood of our employees going home and saying, oh, our people are the best. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, we have this whole other target segment internally. I'm like, yeah, nobody talks about that. Thanks. I didn't even bring it up in any of my stuff. So like, that's why I love having these conversations, because you practitioners will say stuff that just it's not on my mind. But then when you say it, I'm like, that needs to be in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, because you just assume, right? You assume that your people know what's going on. You just assume that they're on the same board, like they're on the same page as you. You assume that, and the reality is it doesn't happen. It actually doesn't happen a lot. I mean, so I think that they're equally as important, right?
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, and again, it highlights the interlinkages, important stuff that I try to get across in a core course like this, where it's a survey of, the interlinkages between different aspects of the company. So you're talking like human resources and marketing, internal marketing, to make sure that the employees create the right perception, consistency across the brand that's being projected, and that brand ultimately across all of its touch points create trust, with the doctors that are referring, and with the community members, patients that are going to be coming in.
Well, and that's true for like even a business that sells product, right? Like you don't want someone to call into a customer service center and the person on the other line is disgruntled, is unhappy. And I mean, that's part of your brand, correct? It's also part of your message. It's part of your communications. You want the person to sound like they have a smile on their face and that they're there to help you. You want them to also be a part of the brand that you're trying to put out, regardless of the position. It doesn't matter what the position. So I think that internal marketing is just as important as external marketing.
You got to establish that trust. Well, Jennifer Massenberg, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. All the best for a happy and healthy 2020.
Oh, you too. And thanks for having me. This was great. Anything you need.
In the next segment, we'll talk about techniques for gathering and amalgamating data in ways that allow us to best identify and locate target markets in order to speak to them. See you next time. Oh no, that's what I just deleted. Son of a gun. Let's talk about you for a section. I snowboard and inline skate to satisfy my need for a drencher. Take 5 to 10 other scraps of paper. Oh my God, they're backing something up outside. You've got to be kidding me. I left out geographics.